Hi, welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneurs, international speaker, and longtime coach in professional baseball, coaching in 3 World Series. Today on the Winners Find a Way show is my guest, Mike Faith from headsets.com. I said headshots. How about that? How you doing, Mike?
Hey, good. It's good to be here, Trent. Thanks very much for having me. And we can call it headsets, headshots, whatever works. It's just great to be.
Yeah. Well, is that one of your miraculous headsets you're wearing right now, by the way? Is that one of the we can buy that online for how much? You want to just plug right now? Like
I didn't want to do any plugging, but no, this is the dual ear lightner, so it covers both ears, blocks out some background noise. This is, I've got several different headsets, but I like this one if I know I'm going to be sitting down and just talking one-on-one with someone for a while.
For sure. I appreciate you coming on and talking on one-on-one for a while. So let's talk about, if you're tuning into the show for the first time, the Winners Find a Way show is about finding a way. When faced with adversity, have you ever faced stiff adversity, felt like the losses are mounting and you need to find a better way? I think you came to the right place. Whether you were already an entrepreneur, athlete, business leader, working to start your journey today to being elite, this is the podcast and show for you. Today, Mike Faith joins us. And Mike, tell them where they can find you. Where can we find Mike Faith online?
MikeFaith.com. That's my personal website. There's not a lot of activity there. It's not a hugely followed website, but the company that I found is headsets.com, and that's probably more useful to most people.
Perfect. Let me talk about a few key. You're on LinkedIn. They can find you there, and that's good. So, a few highlights I jotted down about your story. Right, you left England, your native homeland, when you were 27 in search of better weather. I love that, better wealth opportunities, and getting away from the British tendency to not let new ideas and new leaders break out of the mold easily. I love that. So you left school at 15. Right? No business, no training, no education. And there's like, oh, hey, I don't know anybody with an MBA at 15, right? Entrepreneurship was your fit. I mean, that just seemed to land for you. And you didn't make the best employee, if that's fair, right? And so you've been at the helm of this now 23 years. Tell me how you got started and, how's that going today? Like what's happened? Give us a little timeline of those 23 years and how effective. Listen, we know, I don't know the exact stat, but I think it's 4 out of 5 companies do not make it to 5 years, right? So this is pretty staggering, very sustainable, headsets.com.
Yeah, it is. And thank you. And I mean, gosh, I could talk for hours on things we've done and what we've learned and what happened on the journey. So I'll try and condense it down for you, Trent. And, yeah, I was using headsets in another business I was running back in 1997, and they weren't very good. They kind of sucked, actually.
Yeah.
And the returns policy was bad, and you couldn't get hold of anyone. And based on my experience, a data point of 1, which is usually all I need is 1 data point to make major life decisions. I thought, all right, there's a market here, so I started importing and selling telephone headsets. And then we didn't have the domain. The domain came later. The headsets.com domain. We were originally headset discounters.
Okay.
And we got it up to about 3 million a year in sales, but not really making any profit. And I kind of looked hard at what was going on and kind of read a few different business books and thought, okay, we need to change our strategy. So we went out and found the owners of the domain headsets.com and did a deal with them. They were using it, but they were using it in a much smaller way than what our vision was. And took the domain on and built a website, because we didn't have a website to start with. This was 1997. Only a few people had a website. And then we never really looked back. We've grown the company, and we've been through many ups, downs, trials, tribulations, different phases. But I never thought I'd be in the same business 23 years.
Yeah.
And here I am, and I'm in for the next 23 years as well, if I last that long, because I'm damn enjoying it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I was just gonna. You started with the we was four of you, right?
No, I've had different people involved in the business over time, but I've got some shareholders.
Yep.
Sorry, there was a call coming in there. Excuse me. I've
Yep.
got some shareholders in the business as well, and then I've got two long-time people in the business that I consider my business partners. But to some extent, some of my team members, a lot of my team members have been around over 10 years, and I really think of longer term team members as business partners, and
Yeah.
it's not really just an employee at that stage. The
Right.
relationship changes.
I like that. I like that. Now most people don't know that Tony Hasai of Zappos, for the late Tony Hasai, unfortunately,
Yeah,
was an original investor with you.
yeah, he was. Tony Shea and I met in 1999. He was in San Francisco, which is where I was at the
Yeah.
time, and we met and talked headsets and business, and became one of the original investors in the company. And then, just for the fun of the story, if I can, Trent, about 6 months after he invested, we had breakfast one day, and he said, "Mike, I'm doing this shoe company, and if you want to invest in that." And I remember leaning over the table and looking at him and saying, "Tony, it's never going to work. Just don't do it, man." And it just shows how wrong we could all be.
Yeah, there's a humbling moment right there, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love that. That's so just real, right? Like who's thinking? I mean, what year was that? 98? Like who's thinking, yeah, this is a good idea. Online shoe sales. No one's ever seen them, can't try them on. Tony, are you bonkers? Like what are you thinking, right? And man, I know, I'll bet I need more than two hands to count people that I know that have toured his facility in Las Vegas because they want to see how it works, right? And their tours are incredibly well known, right? And I mean, not just in the business, but it is a whole movement. And my wife is a loyalist, right? Like she's the one who orders 4 boxes and sends 2 back, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, Tony and his group have always been so good in that way. And tragic, he had gone so early, but let's talk about yeah, go ahead. Tell them about the exit strategy for headsets.com.
Well, yeah, my exit, when people ask that, I mean, I say it a little bit tongue in cheek, but I say my exit strategy is death. Because why would I want to sell it
Yeah.
before then? I'm a lot of entrepreneurs that they want to sell their business, and I've never really understood that. I mean, I'm an
Yeah.
entrepreneur because I enjoy it. I like what I do. I work with some great people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sustainable business that's got a lot of potential left in it. I enjoy it every day. I work hard. I don't work as hard as I used to, I must admit, Trent. But, as early an entrepreneur, you work 12,
Oh
14,
man.
16, 18-hour days. Now I'm like, as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm like, 8's enough for me normally. I can do 9
Yeah,
or
yeah,
10, but,
yeah.
um, but what would I do if I sold it? I'd have a lot of money and a lot of time. And I think those are very dangerous for entrepreneurs,
Mm.
because entrepreneurs like to be busy. And I think when they're not busy, they can suffer. And when they've got a lot of money, things can go the wrong way. So I like where I am at the moment and what I'm doing, and I've got no intention to change the business or the ownership.
Fabulous insight. I mean, it's fabulous, like not only in the present, but really foresight too. And I agree with you. I think those are two various combinations, right? We always say, what's the old adage of idle hands, right? Idle hands, like, we're just
Yes.
asking for trouble, right? So it's not good. But you have a passion, a couple things you're passionate about. You got this great business, very sustainable.
Mm.
It's a very interesting perspective that you say that. And one of the things I like that you just mentioned that I think is one of the biggest challenges right now in social media and the population is hey, they're telling these kids, go be an entrepreneur. It's easy. Go do a website. You won't have to work hard. Hey, have you read the 4 Hour Work Week? That's all you got to do. Like, no, 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 no. So when you describe those early days of those 16 hours, like, I don't even, those are so early for me. Those are still grinding away, right? And 16 hours, that's not uncommon. Weekends, that's not uncommon. And I think they're duping some of our youth to think like, oh, this is going to be so simple. And they don't know what they're in for.
Yeah, I totally agree, Trent. And I think it's I think it is a little bit misguided because very few entrepreneurs that I know have just got lucky.
Yes.
I mean, we get lucky, but we get lucky and you add that into the hard work, and that's what creates, this formula for success that doesn't always happen anyway for many of us. And, if I look back, I do consider I worked really hard, but I got very lucky as well. And I think that's a big component. But, I got I call him a young kid that works for me now. He's 23 years old, and I shouldn't call him that.
Yeah.
But he was for a while not working that much. This is before he came onto our company, because he was making money on crypto, and he thought that's how he'd make money for his life. And the crypto crash, or the crypto ups and downs that have come recently, have actually been really good for him to think, okay, crypto isn't, I sit there and I just make money all my life. I might have made some, I might make some more, I might lose some. And it's led him to realize that, he's got to do the hard work, which I think is a good lesson and a good ethic for us all to have.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. And I like how you talk about that, right? Because we do need some luck, right? We do need some things to go our way, but I do believe that hard work creates a lot of opportunity. Some people call it luck, right? But I often think about people maybe hearing about headsets.com on this show for the first time. And I'm like, oh yeah, welcome to, Mike Faith. He's a 23 overnight sensation, 23 years, right? Like it's not like easy, right?
Yeah.
So I always love that about the work that goes in. One of your obsessions is something that I like as well. Not nearly as good as you, but chess. You're a chess man.
Yeah. I played chess online for maybe an hour or maybe sometimes 2 hours every day, and I really enjoy it. And I think it's the perfect mix of kind of strategy and gamesmanship and competitiveness. And it's really a game without luck. There's no dice in chess. It's really about, you're really responsible just for the moves that you make and competing against your opponent's moves or your opponent's mistakes. So fascinating game.
Talk about like those three big lessons, the three big lessons of chess, because they're things that I think adapt and apply to a lot of things in life, right? But what are the three big lessons, your big takeaways from chess?
Oh, gosh, I might struggle with that one, Trent.
Well, I like what you just said about, responsibility, right? Like, hey, like I got to make the move. I'm the only one who's got to own it, right? It's mine. And this is a chance. This is strategy and skill. It's not like, oh, I got lucky. Look at that. I just happened. Oh, is that checkmate? Whoops. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Not happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What else? What else did you tell me?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of that now you said it, because I answered that without realizing what I was saying.
Yeah.
But it's responsibility for your own actions when you play chess, and the outcome is really just down to how well you play and how well the other person plays. And then one of the other components is it's really about who makes mistakes, whether you make mistakes or whether the opponent makes mistakes, and that's really where you go wrong. If you play a clean game, it really can come down to the end with, a stalemate.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what the third one was I said, but as I'm thinking of it now, the third one I'm thinking right now is that you have to keep practicing to get better, and you have to keep learning. And there's no ultimate end game, I think, in chess. I mean, maybe if you win the world championship, but short of that, I mean, you can always keep getting better. And nowadays, a computer can beat you still. So I guess you can still get better even if you're the world champion.
Yeah. So continuous improvement, always going to happen. And I love the idea as a leader. Think about like a leader. We come up with ideas, we innovate, and we know well the intended consequence. My intended consequence is to, capture your king, right? Like that's it. That's the game. But so I immediately make a move to put myself in position to do it with no consideration of your bishop there that's about to kill me, right? Take my queen, right? But my intended consequence is real, but my unintended consequence, if not considered, becomes major challenges, right? So I love the game of strategy and thoughtfulness and how it applies to how we're thinking. It does keep us sharp. It keeps us sharp. I like also the mental acuity, and I think that people gain over time of keeping their mind sharp. And I think when we talk about conditioning, there is physical conditioning, but there is mental and moral conditioning involved too. And this is one that I think really meets those two very well.
Yeah. 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 I think you've thought about chess deeper than I have. So I'm going to go away and rethink the game and how I play it. It's funny. I mean, I kind of play chess because I enjoy it. It's one of my things that, is just a fun thing for me. So I've got no ambition to be world champion. I enjoy getting better, but it's just a fun kind of relax and zone out for me. And so I guess I'm not serious, even though I play an hour or two a day.
That's cool. Well, the strategy's big, and I love it. So let's talk about something else most people don't know about you, and we're gonna name drop here a little bit. All right, just a little bit. Is you host a lot of dinners, and you host author dinners. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, I when I read a book or if there's just someone that I know or want to meet, I'll invite them to a dinner or a talk and raise money for their cause. So I started this first in 2006 with Richard Branson, and had him to a dinner in San Francisco. He was coming into San Francisco, so I arranged the dinner on the same night and got together some friends and gathered some pretty sizable donations for his nonprofit. And I thought I liked this idea, so I've done it since on occasions. And I kind of transitioned more recently, just before COVID, to doing talks at my condo with drinks rather than a dinner, just because then I can get more people in than at a dinner table. And recently interviewed Malcolm Gladwell, then Ryan Holiday. And I've got several more coming up, kind of post-COVID, but I've put it on hold for a little bit. But I just find it a fun way to meet interesting people, gather friends together, and do a little bit of good for a nonprofit.
That's awesome. I think it's a great cause, right? And man, I'm gunning to make that dinner one day. That's all. I'm just gunning to, either way, either be the author or make the invite list one day, right? Because man, it would be great like to star, have you, man, right? So when I ask you, Mike, you and I have been friends for a while. We've known each other probably 4 or 5 years. I asked you, hey, Mike, come on my show. We're going to talk about winners find a way. We're going to talk about some hard things.
And I'm just going to take this call, Trent. I think it's the delivery, if you don't mind. For
Yep. All right. So, Mike, you and I have known each other for 5 or 6 years, and both entrepreneurs. We met actually at an entrepreneur function. And tell me why you come on a show like this. I asked you as a friend to come, but we talk about winners find a way. Going to talk about some challenging things along the way. Why do you do that?
Come on the show or find a way?
Why do you come on the show? Why do you share that?
I think because you asked. I mean, one of the things I've found in business is, if people ask you to do things, entrepreneurs will often do it. And if you ask for help from someone, they'll usually give it. And, I think entrepreneurs are far more, I don't know if it's giving and generous, or if it's just they can't help saying yes, or they're addicted to activity. Maybe it's all of those. But I've asked people to be on my board before, and people say yes, and I very rarely get declined. So I think it's just an entrepreneurial inclination to take action and say yes to things.
Good. Well, I'm glad you said yes. Let's talk about young Mike quickly. Let's talk about young Mike. I mean, you leave school 15 years old. Like, is there a time, like, can you tell me the most impactful pivot point you had as a kid did you know you were destined to run a multi-million-dollar company and do all these things in the States? Did you know that when you were 14, 15 years old? Or was there a moment that said, hey, this is going to set me on to where I got to go and I've got to do something different?
Yeah. I think some of it was probably in me, in my nature, Trent, and I'm not sure how or where that came from, but I always kind of had envisioned and viewed, let me use that word, that I would be in business. And I think it was a progression of my thinking over the years. I think at 12, I was running a tuck shop at school. I was taking in, the candy store. I was buying candy and taking it in and selling it. So I always had this kind of tendency, these sort of things.
Yeah.
But I would like to add, there's a funny story about, living in America. I can remember as a kid, and perhaps I was 5 or 6, I was fascinated by earthquakes. And I said to the teacher in class one day at school, if they have earthquakes in San Francisco, why do people live there? And the teacher said, if you ever go there one day, you'll know why. And I ended up living in San Francisco. That was my first 25 years in the States.
Yeah.
So, was that destiny manifesting itself? Was it just one of those weird coincidences in life? I'm not entirely sure. But so even coming to America was kind of ended up not being a big surprise when I think about my life story and how things progressed.
Yeah. Were you there for the big earthquake, the Oakland, during the World Series? Were you there for when the bridge collapsed?
No, just missed it. I came
Okay.
I came in late 90 and 91.
Okay,
and
wow.
That was in 89. That was the big earthquake.
So there was still some probably resulting of that, like still kind of present. Did that freak you out? Like, did that freak you out as a guy going, I remember worrying about these things when I was a kid. Now it's like, this could really happen, because it did.
Yeah, it did. I was, earthquakes have always been on my mind. They've been a fascination for me. And there I was living in San Francisco, and it was always on the back of my mind.
All right, let's talk. Let's move to the winners find a way. I love the quote by Chris McChesney and Sean Covey in their book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. They said winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win.
Yeah. Like,
coming from a sports background from my life, this has been natural, right? Hey, we're down 5-1. Guess what? We got to do something different. This isn't working, right? Like something's got to change. And there's elementary KPIs right now that say we are not winning, right? It is evident we are losing. Yeah. So talk to me about a bit of your background that allowed you to overcome and become one of the percent in business and life. When you were up against it, losing, found a way to come back and win, down but not out. Tell me an experience that you had in that category.
Yeah. I think there's variations on that happen every day. I mean, every day in business, there's disappointments, there's things that don't work, and then there's bigger ones that happen, every month and every year, and some are kind of major that happen, a few times in your life. So I think there's a whole range of them, and part of the mindset that I think I've adopted, and perhaps many entrepreneurs have adopted, and maybe it was more natural in some. For me, I've had to kind of practice it and learn it, is to accept problems and misses, and then just carry on and just keep walking and just walk straight on through it, because it happens. There's things that just don't go right and go wrong even when it's unfair, and they shouldn't. And you have to pick yourself up and move beyond it. And I think one of the biggest and early ones for me, Trent, was when I was 21. I went bust, and I just didn't really manage a lot of the finances for a business that I was running well, and I got hit by surprise when interest rates in the UK went from 10% to 15% in the same day. Imagine that. They were already at 10 and they went to 12 in the morning, and then went to 15 in the afternoon. This was when there was a run on sterling, and they were trying to defend the pound, and it put me out completely, and that was tough to deal with. But I think there's nothing like a good bankruptcy or two to make someone really understand how to get things right. So, there was a famous phrase or saying by I read in a book called "Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do."
Yeah, I remember that book.
And, by Robert Schuller. And I think it said, in every problem or in every adversity, the seed is sown for yet a greater triumph. And I kind of repeat that to myself a lot. When something's not working right, when something doesn't feel right, when something goes terribly wrong, I'll end up saying, no matter how bad this is, the seed is being sown for a greater triumph here. And I found that really helpful. I'm not a religious person, but I find that is one of the things, and I've got various kind of mantras or things that I do that are perhaps, might come across as spiritual in nature, that I find get me through things and help me stay sane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Robert Schuller, yeah, you could say not religious, but for people who don't know Robert Schuller, he was a Los Angeles based area, Anaheim, Orange County, who and the Crystal Cathedral, and long time TV pastor, right? And he wrote some great books. And I can remember seeing that book when I was probably 12 years old or 15 years old, sitting on my mother's work desk, right? Like, and I thought, man, like, what does that mean? Like, tough times don't last, tough people do. I remember thinking about that, and I have never actually read the book, so that's very cool. What's the superpower that separates you from others, catapults you to the 1%? What do you think? I mean, a lot of chaps like yourself, right? You know a lot of folks. So tell me, what do you think's different? What do you think said, like, your determination? What separated you? I mean, 21, you take a hit, you're not down, you don't stay down. Why is it different?
Well, I think I think part of it might be is I'm sometimes oblivious to problems, or I don't always see them, and it's actually a kind of like a blind spot I've got, and because I've got that blind spot, I carry on going. My kind of risk reward ratio says this is good to keep going still, and maybe it's not, and maybe I'm wrong, but because I don't see it in the same way that other people do, then I see the possibility and the opportunity more than the problem or the area that's not working for me. And or perhaps to put it another way, I guess I've always got a vision about what's coming next and where I want it to be. So I look at what I want the future to be, rather than perhaps statistically how the future really is.
Like that. That's good.
And I don't know if this is a positive thing. I mean, it's happily worked out well for me in my life, Trent, but it also means that perhaps, I failed to see many of the problems that were staring me in the face that other people would have rightfully seen. So it's kind of like it's a disability that perhaps works in my favor.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a disability, but it's interesting though. Mike, when you think about it, it is a superpower, because I think we know it, right? We talk about, Twain wrote about it. We spend 90% of our world, time worried about things that never happen. And so we're so focused on the problems and the consequences of those challenges that, so for me, when I hear that, I hear you saying, I see the opportunity is greater than the risk of the problem.
Yes.
And
yes.
If you have a vision to understand that, and I think Tony had that, right? Tony, and listen, Tony's probably thanking his lucky stars, like he didn't listen to you, like, right? Like, because you said that's not going to work, right? Like, I mean, you're his friend. You're a trusted advisor. He believes in you. You're doing something good with your company at that time, and so why wouldn't he have? So it has merit. It's not like he just said, Mike doesn't know. I mean, part of that, but yet he said, in maybe your same space, right? Is he saw greater opportunity than maybe the challenge or risk of the problem.
Yeah, totally. And maybe another thing there, Trent, is I'm a risk taker, but there's a mode of risk, and I when I go to Vegas, I don't gamble because the odds are against me. So when there's the house has got a 52% chance of winning, well, I gamble. But in life, if I think there's something where there's a 52% chance of me winning, I'd gamble it all. If I lost it, I'd lost it. If I win, I've got double. Actually, I've got just over double, or maybe it's double with a 52% chance. But if the odds are in my favor, I'll take the gamble. And people are like, why would you take that risk? I'm like, because the odds are in my favor. If I lose it all, it doesn't actually matter. Life will carry on. And the odds are stacked towards me winning.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always intrigued by that. Calculated risk is the name of the game for me, right? It's the name of the game. And I forget the movie, right? The movie with the woman who goes in, Katniss, right? And they do the show where they bring everybody in, and the woman says, may the odds be forever in your favor. I'm like, the odds are terrible. Like, it's awful. Like, listen, everyone's gonna die except one person. May the odds be forever in your favor. Like, it's 1 in a 25 chance, right? Like, most of us are gonna die here. And it's just, it's so funny. I laugh at it when she says it every time because it's sad. I mean, it's, does anyone actually believe this? I'm thinking to myself, like, she says this with such a happy face and the joy and like, oh, like, hey, best wishes to you, right? And like, may the odds be forever in your favor. Like, no one has good odds here. And so I love that calculated risk of, hey, when the odds are in my favor, there are reasons this data has been collected. The odds are in place. The risk has been calculated. I've made it. There's confidence for you, I'm hearing, in moving in that direction because you have some preparation, you have some knowledge of it, and you have positioning that says, hey, I have an ability to move in this and feel good about it. Is that fair?
Yeah, and yeah, it is. And there's one more I'd add in there if I can, Trent,
Sure.
which is I have gut feel. Because a lot of business decisions, we don't have evidence or data. We try and collect what we can, but there's still a lot of assumption and a lot of gut feel. And many people get paralyzed making decisions without a complete set of data, which I understand, because perhaps what as entrepreneurs we do is somewhat foolish, and that's we make decisions and we have a bias for action with inadequate data.
Mm. So you said you have gut feel.
Mm.
I don't believe in it. What do you think
I
of
was gonna,
that? Like, I don't believe. Yeah, like, isn't that crazy? I know.
well,
I have
I
this argument.
was gonna say, I think we all have gut feel,
No,
don't
no,
we? We
no.
just have different
That's
gut
right.
feel.
That's right. It's exactly what I believe in. So let me expound, right? Because it's such a good topic, and we know people that like everyone just goes, "Oh my gosh, Mike Faith, like, man, just ask me." He's got a gut feel on these things, and when he says it, like he's right. Like you just know. And so to me, just knowing the little things about you, I do know, Mike, is you're a strategist in your mindset. You've been through some tough things. You left school at 15 at a massive risk. You moved to a new country where they obviously don't speak your native tongue. For anyone who's hearing the show for the first time, Mike doesn't talk like us. All right, so like, and who's us in America? We all talk different, right? So it's you've been through lenses and experience that shape you, and you went through probably a much more challenging route than a lot of people didn't. Most people don't work the candy stand when they're 10 years old and figure out how to make a buck by buying a candy bar for $0.25 and selling it for $1. And that's US term. Sorry, I'm not using your pounds. All right.
So good.
And so my feeling is Mike Faith is one of these unique people who has calculated each of those experiences, both good and bad, and taken those and processed those in. And now he's got a filter that says, ooh, went bad. Ooh, that's good. Ooh, that goes good. And you start separating these things out, separating. So when things come in, you're like, oh, that goes into this category of these separated experiences that didn't work well and why they didn't work well, which you've indexed in the Mike Faith Rolodex of this brilliant mind, right? And then everyone goes, man, that dude's just got feel for stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because he's got 40, years of experience or whatever that is of gut feel of experience that he's actually had. And it's calculated. But I would say the difference is when someone says, well, I'm the same age as Mike. I don't know what that age is, but why don't I have the gut feel he has? Well, did you break down the data every time it happened? Did you index it? Did you take in the data and realize what was good about it, what was bad? Did you review the tapes on each one of those instances and go back and say, why did it work? Why didn't it work? What went right? What would I do differently next time? Because my guess is Mike Faith probably does that nearly every time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I do pretty much, Trent, and I was thinking, I was moving the analogy back to the chessboard there, because
Yeah.
the best chess players review their chess game and look for what happened, and they'll do that all the time. They'll spend more time reviewing their chess games than they will
Yes.
play in the chess games. And I don't do that in the chess world because I play chess for fun.
Yes.
But in the business world, or life in general, I spend a lot of time doing that review analysis process, which I'd never thought of before. So it's you're helping me learn more about myself there.
Do you watch Ted Lasso?
I do.
I love Ted Lasso, right? I am loving Ted Lasso. And I love it early in this first series where Beard, the assistant coach, has his girlfriend, and they're both chess players, right? And they're out on a date, really going out, and he's like, night to they're doing a verbal game, in the bar, right? And I'm just thinking, like, I don't know socially if I would do this ever, right? But it's funny, and they bring it out, and I'm loving the show. By the way, I mean, I feel like the cast of this thing has just, and I love British humor. I like the wit, I like the quick, and I have to watch with other people on subtitles because they don't see it as quick. But it's a good way. It's a good way to learn. But it drives me crazy. But it's I'm loving the show.
Yeah, it is a great show. It's very well done. I haven't watched all of the ones that are available yet, so I'm a little bit. I'm probably about halfway through, but I'm looking forward to seeing the whole thing.
Oh my gosh, it's laugh out loud, good stuff. But I like the other thing about it is it brings us all of our emotions. Like, it really brings it all together. It's funny, it's humorous, and if you're my age in America, he makes so many movie references to my era of a kid. They do these things all the time, pulling back to movies that are really generational, in my opinion, I guess, but Back to the Future and these things that he just touches on. And it's so cleverly done. And I think the casting really impresses me too, how they've hit kind of our thoughtful who is who in our social circles, and how they treat people in the hierarchy of the owner and the wealth. It's very interesting how they did it dynamically.
Oh, it is. It is. You Have you spent any time in England? You could go there and just kind of experience the whole thing. It's exactly like that.
It's exactly like that. Yeah, I have not spent a ton of time in England. I have spoken London on a number of times. And by the way, the last time I was there, I crossed off my bucket list as I went to go see Arsenal on the pitch, and went to my Premier League game and did the whole thing, man. The morning, the bars, I did it right, man.
Good on you.
Yeah, I was here. So let's talk about looking back. You look back at the bankruptcies, you look back leaving school at 15 years old. You go through this thing. Would you do it differently today, knowing what you know now?
Yes and no. I mean, I've got two answers to that, if I can. In fact,
Okay.
I'm going to cover my options and answer it both ways. This is the perfect gamble.
Yeah, I don't like your chest, because do you try to make two moves at once and say, "Let me see which one I like"?
um, I think there are things that there's many things that I would have done better. There's things I wouldn't have done. There's, but both business and personal. And, don't we all have that? I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
We don't play things perfectly, far from it. We kind of screw many things up, and we continue doing that through life, and we just get better. In fact, I say, I say at work, because I try and encourage an atmosphere of mistakes. And I say, all we do is make mistakes and keep going, and then we die. We just keep learning. But there's no end game apart from you're out of the game, and you never get to perfection. So yes, there's many things that I think I would change and do differently, and mistakes and things I did wrong. And but on the other hand, if I'd have done them differently, would I be the person I am today? What else would have happened?
Yeah.
So it's like the time machine thing, isn't it? If you
Yeah.
can go back and change time and you do it, well, do you actually get a better outcome, or do you screw up in another way somewhere else? So I don't think I have regrets per se. I don't think in many ways I would change anything, but I have made many mistakes. I made more mistakes than most that I wish I'd have learned earlier and done better. But I don't know if I'd change it if I could go back.
All right. That's good. All right, let's talk about what would you recommend for somebody else? If someone out there right now is facing a tough time. I mean, it's tough. They're struggling, and a lot of people are in this situation, right, Mike? I mean, COVID's hit our country. We've had a pandemic. Economically, many companies have been hit. Many have flourished, by the way. A lot of Leadershipity brands are cooking. We're riling high because, you position yourself for what may happen, right? But at the end of the day, you talk about you're in a challenge and you've been there. What would you tell you when you're going through it? As these people are sitting in that moment right now, what would you tell them? A value, a belief?
Yeah, I've got a few things that I kind of, revolve around in my head, in addition to the Robert Schuller one earlier of,
Yeah.
And indeed, even the cover of the book, "Tough times never last, but tough people do," I think is sometimes a good reminder. But sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you don't always want to hear that. So there's a couple of things that I kind of remind myself of and tell myself off when things are really tough. One is that I've been through stuff like this before. I felt like this before, and it does get better the other end. Yeah. This is just a process that I need to go through. Another one I do is I try and feel the pain rather than try and dismiss the pain or ignore it. I try and feel the pain.
Lean in.
Feeling it, lean into it, feel how bad it is. Don't deny it. I think that helps me get through it. And another one is I remind myself that in 200 million years' time, the whole earth will just be a big ball of ice. And, who gives a toss anyway about this little thing that's happening now that feels so big in the moment. So those are some of the things that I've done.
Yeah, I love that. It's temporary. I that's what I heard. It's real, but it's temporary. You've been there before. This too shall pass. You will feel better in another time. It may not be this time, but it will be in another time. I love leaning into the pain. I find that, once you accept where you're at, what it is, man, that's 50% of the battle. I'm not saying it's gone, but 50% of the battle is there, right? So I love that. I also love the perspective, right? Like, kind of pulling yourself out of it, that, if you want to talk about the plane from 10,000 feet looks a lot different than the one from 100 feet off the ground. I can remember one of my perspective shifts on like stress and anxiety. We were in the World Series in 2002. And I remember Garrett Anderson was one of our best players, and he stepped out of the box in a crucial moment. Crowd's going crazy. You got 50 million people watching on TV, and he yawned. He yawned, Mike. I'm like, Garrett, are we boring you? Like what are you doing, right? And then I got this perspective, like, why is this such a big deal? Why is this such a big deal in the moment? He's doing it to relax his body, right? He's doing it to, because you can't be anxious and yawn. So he's trying to cool his system, and he's smart, great player, really wise guy. And I thought, in that moment, I thought somewhere in the world, there's another continent who, like, they don't give a rip about baseball. They don't care about this World Series. They care about getting food on the table. They care about, what? If I'm going to be the lead of this tribe, I got to be the best at killing a lion. Like there's life or death out there, and like this thing is like what we're going to get all amped up about. And perspective needs to be had by all of us, because we're putting these things on ourselves. And I like to tell people pressure is self-applied.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I like that a lot. Perspective is really good. And in the moment, our own problem seems really big and huge, but in reality, it's not. I mean, unless we are starving or in extreme physical pain, most other things are temporary and will pass.
So good. All right, let me ask you. Let me go to a couple of Q&As here. You've had a lot of success. You've won a bunch. I mean, you're a winner. You've always found a way. And you've had some losses, but you get back up, right? What's the best battle you've ever conquered in your lifetime?
I'm going to start, if I can, just by commenting on the question there, Trent. And you know, sometimes I don't think of myself as a winner. I think of myself as a constant loser. That's why I keep improving. um,
Yeah.
and I'm a little bit uncomfortable to go into the you know, when you say you're a winner. I mean, thank you, but I'm an average guy that's made a lot of mistakes. I keep making mistakes. I keep learning, and I've had some luck that goes along with it. So, and you know, there are people that are far more successful than me in every possible measure. So I think of myself as just a kid on a journey, that that stumbles a lot. So, but given that, what was the question? I got
Yeah.
lost
Well,
again.
first of all, I appreciate your discomfort in it. I do, honor that. But you've done some things that many people would like to do that you have not. And this for my listeners, I'm gonna call you out a little bit on this. For my listeners, I will just let you know that we don't ever stop comparing ourselves. We don't ever stop getting into that what's the quote they use about the imposter syndrome, right? Like, am I a winner? Wait a minute, you know how many times I've lost? like I'm the biggest loser in the world. But like, wait a minute, you've got titles and you've got championships, and those trophies may look different. It may be the car you drive, it may be the friends you keep, it may be the relationships you have in this life. Trophies come in all sorts of different fashions, but there are rewards for your work. And one of the things that I honor about you, Mike, is that you live a life of peacefulness. When I'm around you, I feel it, right? And I don't think people have that in their life. And you've gained that reward through work, effort, developing people around you, developing yourself, continuous improvement. You don't stop. And so for me, you're all about winners, man.
Yeah, well, thank you, thank you. The I'm a lot more peaceful in the past few years. I used to be quite a ball of anxiety and tension, so that's something that's kind of changed in recent years with me. Um, and
So let's go back to the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the question is the best battle you've conquered in your lifetime.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be the one. The battle of, instead of being anxious and tense, being able to relax and enjoy. And that is, as I say, I think it's only the past few years. And there's a couple of things that have really done that for me. And I'm happy to share.
Please.
One of them is psychedelic medicine, under with a guide, with a therapist.
Yep.
That's been quite transformational for me. And then a second one is breath work, which is kind of almost the same thing. It's actually, as they say, getting high on your own supply. But the idea of both of these, and one is, I think they're variations of the same thing. You kind of get to an altered state of consciousness, and one's with chemicals and one's without chemicals. And more and more, I do the breath work regularly, which is the non-chemical version, because you can do that daily without any impairment or side effects. But I find that really helps me discover new parts of myself, and put everything else in the world aside, because it really doesn't matter, everything else. And I can just be with myself and my body and my mind, and really discover new insights about me and the world.
Love it. What do you think? I had Gordy Buffton on my show. He told me a great quote. He said, our depression is our tie to our past, to what's happened, and lost in, could I change it? I should have done something different. And our anxiety is tied to our view of the future, and the present solves all. What do you think to that?
Well, I hadn't heard that, but it kind of makes sense when you say it. And certainly being able to be in the present is something that both psychedelic medicine and breath work has given me. It's
Mm,
exactly that, because you really just come into the present. And I had never spent a lot of time in the present before. And I think that might be kind of maybe stereotypical of entrepreneurs, because
yes.
you spend a lot of time collecting data about the past and worrying about how you're going to put it into the
Yep.
future.
That's right.
And I enjoy being in the future more than anything. So I spend a lot of time there, but I've only just discovered this. Hey, just be in the present and enjoy the present. And I don't need anything, and I can just be, and being is okay with me. So yeah, I think I kind of, just as I'm thinking that through and processing it, what you shared there, Trent, I think that is very good. Yeah,
Well,
it's yeah, depression in the past, anxiety is the future, or that tends to be the problems there, and then being in the
yeah.
present. Yeah, it makes sense.
Let's go to the best way to win. Is there something that you want to share with the listeners that we did not touch on today? Maybe something that, we talked about. I think, let me run down a little bit what we talked about. We talked about chess and the strategy, how those things apply in life and in business and running things and running even a family, and how that may
Yeah,
apply.
yeah,
We talked about your deep commitment to your author group, which is awesome. Talked about your young entrepreneur life, your mindset, accepting problems, working through it, and moving beyond it. We talked about the book, right? Tough times don't last, tough people do. The seed is being sown for a greater triumph. We talked about the opportunity being greater than the risk of the problem or challenge, and
mm,
your vision. And we've also talked about three good advices of, if you're going through it, knowing this is temporary, knowing that you can lean into that pain and feel it and understand it, and the perspective of that, hey, there's other things in this world. You're not
mm,
alone. Probably somebody who's been through this before. Some perspective of that is important. And what you're doing differently to combat some anxiety in your life, which I think is great stuff, by the way,
yeah.
getting more present. What would you tell somebody the best way to win in this lifetime, right now, right where we're at? Would you add to that in any way?
Um, well, maybe. You asked some great questions that make me think, Trent. Um, you know, yeah. Let me go back to the chessboard. Chessboard is a one-player game,
Mm,
but in life, it's a multiplayer game. And whether that's a team game, as in team sports, or whether it's a cooperation game with people on different teams,
hmm.
um, I think that's um, something that I've learned to get better at over the years. And I never played team sports as a kid, um, and I think I'm very lucky that I've begun to learn the art of cooperation and teamwork, and fortunately built a really, really great team around me at work. Um, so perhaps what I'd say is, I mean, from my experience, building a great team of people that I can trust, that trust me, that we know we're facing the same direction. We have different approaches, we have different styles, we have different beliefs, and we can acknowledge and accept and respect those things, but also bring together our focus on the same and singular mission that we've got, and trust each other to work towards it. That has been big for me, not just in terms of success, Trent, but also in terms of workplace satisfaction. I really like the people that I work with, and we really function well as a team, and that makes a huge difference
Yeah.
to me. I'd rather have that than all the monetary success in the world, but not enjoy the people that I'm working with.
It's good. Love it. And I think, I was talking earlier today about John Wooden, and we were talking about
Mm,
his pyramid about team spirit. And, Bill Walton, one of his famous players, just said, hey, man, nobody gets there alone.
yeah,
Nobody makes it alone. Like, you need people around you. And I think that's great to remember in a down period, in a crisis, bring those people in that care, that love you, love on you, that will willing to come alongside in those challenging times. You find out, who your great friends are, who you want to be with, and face those challenges, right? Face the mistakes together. I think that's really important. And I think there's so much value. And I'm the opposite, Mike. I came from this big team environment as this kid. And I can remember like, well, we lost, but I scored 3 touchdowns and I did this. So I felt pretty good. And when I got into individual sports, I really had to learn about me and how I contribute, and my responsibility became from here to here. Because when I lost, I was like, oh, well, it's Mike's fault, or it's Ryan. Like, wait a minute, there's only me out here. Like, it's my fault. And I thought, man, I really had to take ownership. And so me always combating those two things together, it really helped me be a better team member when I learned a lot more about my personal responsibility and how I have to contribute to the greater effect of the team. And at the end of the day, like, doing it together as a team is so much more than doing it as your own. Like, it's a big celebration. You need to celebrate with yourself. That's no fun. Come on. So, all right. So let's wrap it up. Before, I want to get your quote of the day, by the way. The quote that you go to when it's tough, when you're challenged, when you're down, when you're against it, you're up against it. You have something that regulates you. Before I do that, everyone to know, follow the show, YouTube Live, Leadershipity channel. We're on all sorts of different, you can find me on Instagram, Leadershipity, or Trent M. Clark, also on Twitter, leadershipity.com. Look for our upcoming book, The Pyramid of Leadershipity, Accountability for Leaders. DM, email me, anything you want. Like, ask me about Mike. I'll tell you what I know. Get in touch with Mike. He's told you how to get a hold of him, for goodness sakes. And please listen to our episodes. Continue listening. Rate us 5 stars. We work hard to find value, delivering insight from the 1% leaders. And of course, Mike, Faith, you did not disappoint as usual, and I knew you would not. So what's your go-to, Mike? What is your go-to, saying when the chips are stacked against you?
Well, I thought you were going to ask my go-to saying overall, which of course would be, it's a great day to buy headsets.
Yeah.
However,
I thought that was the company logo.
I think, when the chips are down, it is, and if I may repeat from earlier, it is that, out of every adversity, the seed is sown for yet a greater triumph. And, no matter how bad it is now, we'll get through it and it'll get better, and we'll be better off because we'll learn and we'll understand and we'll feel more going forward.
So this is because you're a brilliant guy. We've had a lot of deep conversations on leadership and different things along the way, and worked a little bit together. This is the quote I had for you, thinking about you coming on the show this Friday. It's from David DeWolf. He's the president and CEO of 3 Pillar Global. There's no differentiator in a knowledge economy. Strategies are no longer a differentiator. It's about execution. You can only execute if you have an unbelievable culture and team. And as I hear you talk about headsets, man, I just thought, like, this is what he's created in an environment of people that like to go to work. They like the people they go to work with. They make a difference for people, especially, I'm sure, during COVID. This has been an absolute time. Like, got to get on headsets and get something better, because you're going to be on Zoom 12 hours a day. So I just thought of that immediately. You've been a friend of mine for a long time, and honored to call you friend, and thankful you could be here with us today, Mike. I really appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Hey, thanks for having me on, Trent. I really appreciate you and making this a fun and interesting conversation. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks so much. For everybody, every Friday, Winners Find a Way, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Join us on all the networks and look for the podcast, Apple, Spotify. You can find us there, and you'll be looking for that release in a couple months on Mike, but you can see the live show on YouTube as soon as we release it.